can sometimes feel like a lot, but you don't have to do it alone. I strongly believe that we're stronger together. Here, we're going to slow down, have real talks, make sense of things together, and explore ways to intentionally grow the life you want. We're going to talk about mental and physical health, relationships, money, work, and community. Welcome to Rooted in Intention with me, Karina Gomez. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Rooted in Intention. Thank you so much for tuning in. In this episode, we're going to be talking about money, and I'm joined by a special guest, Sara Diaz, who is a mental health expert and speaker, and she's a licensed clinical social worker as well as a certified financial social worker. And she is the creator of the First Gen Madrina, which offers support and services to those who are first geners. So, Sara, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Karina, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
And to get us started, can you share a little bit more of what is a first gener in the first place for those who might
Mhm.
not be familiar with the term?
Yeah, so the confusing thing is that there's actually many different definitions for first gen or first generation. It depends on the context that you're speaking about. The Department of Ed, which, in the state of what we're talking about right now, things are changing. But the Department of Education created a definition for first generation, which was basically the first in your immediate family to graduate from college in the United States. And they created that definition because there's a lot of funding that goes towards first generation college students to support them on their college journeys. A lot of us also use it in terms of immigration, right? So I consider myself to be a first generation Cuban American because I was the first to be born in the United States. I kind of see it as the first, right? Just simply the first to enter into a new space. It could be the first to break generational cycles and go to therapy. It could be the first in your family to buy a home, right? Your first generation in that way. So we do see it come up in different ways. It depends on how you want to identify in the context that you're looking at it. But mostly I say, I'm first gen because I was the first in my family to obtain a master's degree and the first to be born in this country. And for those of us that are first gens, we know that there's a struggle when it comes to being a first gen. We're often the ones that are paving the path and doing things without a roadmap, and paving the way for the future generation. So that's kind of the audience that I target, that I work with, because I didn't realize that I was a first gen until after I had graduated college. And there's so much information and so many resources that are out there that I felt like I missed out on, and I kind of wanted to pay it forward. So that's what led me to create the First Gen Madrina, and here we are.
That's amazing. One, congratulations on completing your master's. And then two, for continuing to pave the way forward, not just for yourself, but for others along a very, very similar journey as well. And can you share a little bit more about your story and how you came to do the work that you're doing?
Okay, so that can go in many different directions in terms of money or in terms of mental health, or both.
Both.
Okay, so I guess they are very much intertwined. So I became a social worker because of my own experience with anxiety as a first gen college student. So I had my first uh, big panic attack freshman year of college. I
Mhm.
did not know what I was doing. I took on like 20 credits.
Oh
No, I
my
don't know why no one
God.
stopped me. Was working a part-time job, was like a caretaker in my family, and I had my first panic attack. And thankfully, my mom experienced anxiety as well, and she kind of knew the signs. So I was able to get connected with a therapist, but I realized that there was so much shame in me talking about my experience with anxiety within my own family. there is very much a big stigma within the Latino community.
Mm.
Still, we're getting better, but still a huge stigma in talking about our struggles and our challenges. And it was kind of just viewed as, oh, this is a phase. Oh, all college students experience this. And it was a lot of invalidation. And in my own experience in navigating anxiety and seeing a therapist, I started to realize that I wanted to be her for someone else. And
Mm.
essentially that's where the Madrina part of my name came from, was kind of being that person that you can go to and talk to, where you will feel validated, where they won't turn you away, and they'll be able to guide you and tell you, like, here are the resources, here are the steps. So that my own work, my own personal journey is really what inspired me to be a therapist, to be a social worker. And I wanted to make sure that if I could play a role in breaking the stigma, that I was going to do that. So that's kind of what led my journey to becoming a social worker. And along the way, I started to realize I went on my financial independence journey in 2021. I paid off all of my debt aside from my student loans.
Ooh.
Um, yeah, that was it was a lot of work in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was working remote and I found that I had, some extra time on my hands and wanted to see what else I can do, and took up all the odd jobs and learned everything. I read a lot of books during that time. I listened to all the podcasts, and I was able to make it work. I want to say I paid off like 30, 35. I don't remember the
Oh my
exact number,
God.
$1,000
That's like a brand
in.
new car for some people.
Yes, well, I
Yeah.
did pay off my car. That was about 3 years old at the time, and I paid all my credit card debt.
Mm.
So, fast forward a few years, I started to realize that I was getting myself back into debt, and I couldn't get out. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? I know, I did it once. I have the education, I have the resources. Like, what am I not thinking about? And, it's to me, I feel a little shameful sometimes thinking that I'm like, how did this not click sooner being a therapist? But I didn't realize that a lot of it was tied to my mental health.
Mm.
And the reason why I was going back into cycles of debt was because I never healed my money trauma.
Mm.
Um, and thinking about like my money story, which we can get into, of what my view was on money growing up and how that seeped into how I viewed money as an adult. That was kind of, in the way. That's what kept me getting back into the cycle of debt. And I knew that until I addressed that, I wasn't able to really be able to focus on my finances. So
Mm.
I started to think like, okay, I can't be the only one that's going through this struggle, right? Like, a lot of us know what we need to do, but what's stopping us? What gets in the way? And I started to do a lot of research, and I realized that there was a whole certification that I could take as a social worker that really marries money and mental health, and like teaches us that they're pretty exclusive, right? Like, our mental health impacts our money, and our money impacts our mental health. So we have to, at the end of the day, take care of ourselves and take care of our mental health, really, in order to be able to get out of that cycle and really build generational wealth. So that's kind of what led me, my passion for mental health, and then my own experience with mental health and with paying off debt led me to this new journey of financial wellness that I'm super passionate about, and being able to support our first gen community, because a lot of us only know what we know, right? A lot of us are self-taught. We didn't have families or role models or anyone really to teach us and tell us how to do certain things. And I kind of wanted to be that person. So that was like the not so short version. But if you have any specific questions about that, that's kind of like what led me to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that was a beautiful version. Thank you for
Thank
sharing.
you.
And I just want to normalize that even though you were a therapist, I think it makes so much sense that it took you a while to reach that conclusion of like, oh, I have some money traumas to come to because it's
Mm-hmm.
one thing to be working with other people, and then it's another thing to be working within your own brain because you're caught up
Mm,
in your own stuff. So
yeah.
just want to put it out there that it's normal. It's easier to see other people's issues than to see our own issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one question. What is the difference, or is there a difference between a social worker and a therapist?
So social workers can be therapists, but therapists can also have different backgrounds, right? So this a social worker is the degree or the credential that you have, but therapists can also be like licensed mental health counselors or licensed professional counselors. So therapist is like an all-encompassing name.
Hmm.
But there could be different degrees or different credentials that can become therapists if they
Okay,
have their degree and their licensure. Does that make sense?
it does.
Yeah. So you can see a therapist and they can have a bunch of different, backgrounds.
Okay, thank you for sharing that because I
Mhm.
know sometimes the world of mental health is sometimes there's a lot of terminology and a lot of different
Yes.
things that people don't understand. And another thing that I think is just can sometimes be this big umbrella term of trauma. And you mentioned
Mhm.
money trauma. Can you help us understand and conceptualize what is money trauma?
Yeah, so you might have also heard of like financial trauma, and this also has different definitions, but the one that I think is interesting is basically, money trauma is the psychological, mental, or emotional response to an event or a series of events where actual or threatened financial harm occurred,
Mm,
right? So, actual meaning, let's say a parent or you or yourself, you lost a job, right? That's actual financial harm, especially if you don't have a plan. Threatened financial harm could be our economy is not doing the best right now, right? Or getting into the pandemic, there was a lot of job loss. Even if you had your job still, there's still a threatened financial harm of possibly losing your job, right? So it's basically the response, the emotional or psychological response that you have to an event where some kind of financial harm has occurred. And money trauma is basically a lot of it is linked to our own money stories of the messages that we received about money growing up, what we saw, what we heard about money. So to put it into context, my a lot of my money trauma came from two big parts of my money story. The first one that I came to recognize later on, which is interesting because it happened way before I was even born, like
mm,
20 plus years before I was born, was my family's immigration story. So my family came from Cuba. They fled communism where they had everything taken away from them. Literally, their businesses, their homes, everything was taken away from them, having to flee to this country for a better life. And that shaped my money trauma, right? It became part of my money story. And then 20 or 15 years after that, my mom ends up losing her job. And
mm,
she was the primary breadwinner of the family. And with no plan, no budget, no savings, no nothing. So kind of like history kind of repeated itself in a different
mm,
way. And what the money story that I developed was things can easily be taken away from you, which influenced my spending habits.
mhm,
Abundance is not for you, or you can have abundance, but it's temporary.
mm,
So a lot of these pieces of my money story that I didn't realize, obviously at the time, turned into this money trauma because I didn't process it. I never talked about it in therapy because I didn't really think about it since it was, the first story happened before I was even born. So I was like,
mhm,
okay, why do I need to process that? And then the other one happened so long ago that I didn't realize that it was impacting me. So that was something that was a huge part of the trauma that I had to process in order to be able to move forward. Because yes, I was paying off the debt, and yes, I was building savings, but I wasn't addressing the spending. I wasn't addressing the lack of planning or the procrastination, right? Or all that stuff, the mindset that I had that, kind of had and I'm dating myself, but I kind of had like that YOLO mentality of like, you know what, I have the money now, I have to use it because it can be easily taken away from me. Right. So does that make sense that all these parts of my story from my childhood, from growing up, became my money story, and not processing it turned into this form of money trauma that was limiting me from being able to fully pay off my debt and stay debt free and save and invest and all that stuff. So that's how I see money trauma.
Yeah, and I'm really visualizing a roadmap kind of how these different pieces are connecting. And
Yeah.
it really makes me think of what you were saying, like something started before you and
Mm-hmm.
the history and the experiences that your parents had, and then how that influenced what you heard and what you saw, and how that created your money stories. And I know that healing is sometimes a very individual thing that I know I've worked in, you've worked in, others have
Mm-hmm.
worked through in therapy. Can you give a big picture overview of what does healing look like, or what can it look like for people?
It looks very different for everyone. I am a huge proponent for therapy. I have been in therapy since that panic attack happened, first year of college, and I'm not ashamed to say because I think all good social workers need their own social
Hmm.
worker, right? In order to be able to help others, we need to heal as well. So I am a huge proponent for therapy. I also realize that there is so much shame, like we were
Hmm.
talking about before, and that stigma is so strong that it might be difficult to go straight into therapy. I always tell people, try it once, try it out. You never know if it's like the story of Cinderella, right? If the shoe doesn't fit the first time, it doesn't mean that, it's not for you. That means it's just not the right fit to, go on to the next person. But really, therapy for me on a personal level has been a game changer. Like it has taught me so much about myself, so much of what I bring to the table. Um, Healing could also be a lot of self-awareness, recognizing that a lot of the things that happen to us, it's not something to internalize, and it's not things that we necessarily did wrong. In regards to money, I kept telling myself the narrative like, oh, you're just bad with money, right? Like, oh, you're just, financially, you're not the best, or you don't know what you're doing, right? It was very negative self-talk.
Hmm.
And a lot of it, I realized like, oh, this was never a me issue. This
Hmm.
was a lot of the messages that I received growing up. And then also, I didn't mention, but early in 2025, I was diagnosed with ADHD. As a woman in my 30s, I went, all my life not realizing that I had it. And I didn't realize how much that also impacted my impulsivity, my procrastination. So I started to realize like, oh, it's not me. Like I'm not just bad at this. Like this is all a culmination of what I experienced and also just how my brain works.
Hmm.
So healing taught me how to work with my brain instead of against it. It taught me how to prioritize me, how to become self-aware, how to put up boundaries.
Hmm.
So that's really what healing can look like for a lot of us, but there is no one cookie cutter approach. People find healing in different ways. Again, I'm obviously always going to be a proponent for therapy and especially if you're really struggling, but I know people that have found healing in a more spiritual way or through, religion or something like that. There are different avenues. I think the biggest thing for me is recognizing that you're not alone and that we all need and deserve to have additional support and that it's okay to ask for support. A lot of us were not taught that. A lot of us were taught that we had to do things on our own and we had to, face things on by ourselves. And that's not true. There's so much help that's out there, and we don't have to navigate it alone. That's a huge part of my mission and really what I want to do with my business. But yeah, healing can look very different depending on the person. And one more thing I do want to say about healing is that healing is not an overnight journey. Like it is, this is, or it's not an overnight process. It's a journey. It's something that takes time, and we need to be patient with ourselves, and we need to give ourselves a lot of grace, because just like the onion analogy, you get a nice big size onion, there are a lot of layers, right? There's a lot of, if you're gonna unpeel it to get to the core, there's a lot that you have to go through to get to that core, right? So thinking about it in that way, it's something that's gonna take time, and ride that wave, right? Be gentle with yourself. Don't give yourself a timeline. Don't push yourself that you should be at a certain place at a certain time. Do not compare yourself to others, because we are all different. Healing is really a journey, and it's your own personal journey.
Every time I hear an analogy around the onion, I just think of
Mm.
Shrek when he's like, "Oh, are
Yeah.
like onions. We have layers." And my
Yes.
therapist also used that analogy, and I just love it.
Yes.
Because
We are
yeah,
ogres, basically.
yes, we are basically
We
ogres.
we need, yeah, but it's so true. It's not, sometimes we think like, oh, I'll just go to therapy once and I'll be okay. It's like, no, it's, therapy is a lot of work, and it's not fun.
Mhm.
I tell my therapist every once in a while, I'm like, I don't like you right now. And she's like, it's okay. You don't need to like me. Let's ride this wave together. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, thank you for pushing me, right? It is work, and it is a challenge, but the light at the end of the tunnel is so worth it. It is 100% worth it to know that we have, a partner, someone that is going to listen to us and that is going to support us. That's the best part of it.
And I would say it's a journey and it's a process. And it's something that I know from my own experience. Like I went to my therapist and we were probably doing work for a year. And then I was like, oh, I feel pretty solid. And then
Mm,
there's like a pause. And then it's just like you kind of hit other blimps on the road
yeah.
and you're just like, oh, you know what? I do have a little bit more to uncover and dive into. So I think that's definitely something that people should consider. It's helpful to consider.
Mm.
And one of the other things that I was thinking of was, and I lost my train of thought. Oh, yes. It was around how difficult it is to sometimes not know what we don't know and
Mm.
kind of just like building awareness around money traumas. And you shared some examples of how money traumas like came up for you. Can you share a little bit more of what might be some signs that someone might have some money traumas and might not necessarily be aware of them?
Well, first, I would encourage them to think about like what, two things. What is your money story, right? So think about what was that moment in time, or moments in time in your childhood maybe, or growing up, that shaped the way that you view money now. So was there a divorce? Was there ever talks about money, right? A lot of people tell me, they're like, my money story is that we didn't talk about money. Like I don't know anything about it, right? And that could be a part of it. So what were those like moments in time that could have shaped that were moments of actual or threatened financial harm, that maybe you didn't realize that it impacts the way you view now, but that you can probably make the connection like, that is something that could have definitely led, or could have been a little traumatizing. And if you can't think of that moment, just think about what were those messages that you received about money growing up, right? A lot of us, our parents talked about money in a negative way,
Mhm.
right? Money is seen, or it could be perceived to be like, a lot of our culture like see it as like something like, devilish, or like something really bad, right?
Mhm.
Because it has the power to be something bad. A lot of it is like, I think money and mental health. I always use also the analogy of, I don't know if there's any Disney fans that listened, or you have any Disney fans, but Encanto, I say money and mental health are like, we don't talk about Bruno. And in a lot of our
Mm.
cultures, especially the Latino community, those were two topics that most of the times we didn't talk about it. You either heard something negative about it or it was just like, you know, I was taught we don't have money. Hay comida en la casa,
Mhm.
right? Don't ask for McDonald's. Don't ask for this. We have food at home. We don't have money to buy this. We don't have this, right? So, like, what were those messages, especially the negative ones, that you received about money growing up? That's what kind of helps you to start pinpointing, right? Here are the specific kind of these moments in time that I think could have possibly shaped. And then that's why it could be super beneficial to speak with a therapist or a financial wellness coach to kind of say, hey, like this, is there a connection with this? Like, could this have led me to how I view money now? Maybe it wasn't necessarily anything that happened, in your childhood, but you have something like ADHD that can have a huge impact if it's undiagnosed and if it's not treated in how you operate or how you manage your finances. That was a huge part, not just my money story, but having ADHD and forgetting where I put the bills and not knowing
Oh
the due
no.
dates and, all those things. That was a lot of it was part of my ADHD. So I think that a lot of the self-awareness piece is like reflection
Mhm.
in the beginning. If you don't know, like, if you can't pinpoint right away, what was it that did it for me? Just start thinking about what were those moments in time or what were those messages that I received that could possibly have had a negative impact and impact the way that I view money right now. I think that's the best place to start, but having someone like a therapist or a coach that can help you to make that connection is going to be the easiest way to find out.
Yeah. And I think with the ADHD, from what you're sharing, it becomes very evident to me that like that connection between the mental health and
Yeah.
how it's influencing your money decisions, your money actions, any like money avoidance type of thing. And
Yeah.
what other connections, in what ways have you seen mental health issues
Mm.
influence money traumas?
Oh, there's so many. Let's think about like depression, right? And this is hard to say. I'm gonna give very generalized examples, but depression is very broad, and this doesn't mean that this happens to everybody. But let's say you are someone that is depressed and doesn't want to leave the house or can't leave the house. It can't maybe even get out of bed to cook. So you're spending a lot of money buying like through Uber Eats, right? Or having food delivered to you because you can't physically get out of the house. If that is something that's not taken care of, that increases spending, right? Because we all know that those apps are very predatory and they charge like almost the same amount for your food that they do in the delivery, right? So you're spending a lot of money in that way. And a lot of it is tied to the depression of not being able to
Mm.
get out of the bed, not being able to get out of the house and do your, grocery shopping. If you have like a gambling addiction, which a gambling disorder is actually in our diagnostic manual, as an actual mental
Mm.
health disorder, that is obviously something that could impact your finances, right? A lot of the reasons why couples get divorced or get separated is because of finances. We have heard stories of people that go behind their partner's back and are overspending and not telling them. There are stories of people that get into a gambling addiction, right? And they lose their
Mm.
house or they, lose their cars or things like that. So there's a lot of different ways. And again, those are all generalized, right? It doesn't mean that just because you have depression or anxiety or ADHD that you're bad with money. But it gives you a little bit more context of like how it can show up, how there can be a connection between the two. And sometimes we don't even realize it.
Mhm.
Like we could probably go through most of our lives, kind of not realizing the connection until something big happens. And then you're like, wait a second, how did we get here?
Mhm.
And I think that that's why we don't talk about the correlation between money and mental health enough, because we don't realize it until maybe, a bigger life event does happen. And
Mhm.
that's why I really want to spread more awareness on it so that we can, especially with students, taking care of of your mental health and taking care of your finances as early on as possible is crucial as you enter into the workforce,
Mhm.
especially with the way that our economy is right now. It's a little crazy. And
Yeah.
little is an understatement.
Yeah. As you shared that, it helped me like
Mm,
concretely, I think, see that connection. And it actually made me
mm,
think of someone, I think they might have been depressed. And I think one of the other ways it showed up is they were actually looking for a job, but they couldn't
mm.
actually get themselves to apply, and how much of a role that played into actually
Yeah,
making money as well. So it kind of helped me understand that a little bit more as you said that.
yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing with ADHD also,
Mhm.
because the job search process is a job in and of itself, and it's so tedious. And for someone that has ADHD like myself, thankfully, knock on wood, I won't have to do that ever again, having my own business. But I remember the struggles of applying for a job. Like it felt like I had to take the whole day to apply for one job because my brain just could not sit down and focus. And that's obviously something that can harm us in a way because it keeps us from applying for more jobs to have more opportunities. So yeah, that's definitely something that can slowly impact our money in different ways. So there are so many different reasons why taking care of our mental health is so important, and how it can have an effect on our money for sure.
For anyone that might be listening, that they might have ADHD as well,
Mm,
what are some things that helped you that might be able to help them in
mm,
particularly addressing some of these issues around money that you were talking about, such as maybe job applications or
mm.
impulsivity, or like you were saying, like forgetting bills and that type of thing?
So there were a few things, and again, ADHD is also like a spectrum, right? Everyone is different, so it might not work for you. For me, I need to have planners. I need to have reminders. I need to have things where I can see them, things written down, so that I know due dates, so that if I have to put 2 or 3 days before something is due, if I have to put a reminder on my phone or a reminder on my planner, I know that that's what works for me. And then another big thing that ADHDers do without realizing that I did, that's literally how I navigated my entire college journey, and I didn't even realize that it was because of my ADHD, is that we thrive with rewards, or we thrive, like we do better. We need that dopamine of getting a reward. So what I would do is I would break up tedious tasks. So instead of sitting down and doing a 10-page paper in one sitting that I knew I wasn't going to get done, I would do a page and then I would reward myself with, like, I don't know what I was doing at that time, 15 minutes of Netflix or something, right? Whatever works for you, 15 minutes of YouTube, whatever, and then go back. Okay, now I know I got to get another page done so that I can get another 15 minutes of Netflix. So whatever that means in terms of money. So for me is like, okay, when I sit down to do my budget for the month, I'll do half. And then I'm like, okay, I got half of it done. Great. Now I'm gonna go and do something else. And then I come back and I sit down. I'm like, all right, now I'm gonna finish it so that I can get my next reward. It sounds, a little weird for those that that don't have it. If you have ADHD, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But, giving yourself different ways to motivate to keep it going, because we often get stuck in that analysis paralysis. And I think even some non-neurodivergent folks also feel this. Sometimes when you know that there's a task that's tedious, it's going to take you a while, you get into analysis paralysis mode, or you just freeze and you don't want to do anything. Don't look at it as one long, tedious task. Break it up into different tasks and with time, and find little ways to motivate yourself and keep you going in the process. But I think the best part for me is support and community.
Mhm.
Being connected to other people, especially those with ADHD or those that are working on their finances, so that I can get that encouragement, right? Or that dopamine boost from them whenever I needed it, was super encouraging. So I would encourage your audience that community and finding support these days, I think is crucial. So finding those like-minded people that are on the same journey as you that can give you that extra boost when you need it, or that you can message them and like, hey, I'm really struggling to meet my goals this month. Like somebody, give me an extra boost and be able to provide that motivation. I think that was one of the biggest game
Mhm.
changers for me too, is realizing that I wasn't alone and having that community to support me.
Yeah. And Ruby, I was just like, one of the things I think that
Yeah.
she shared is how healing happens in community, or community is
Hmm.
the cure. And that's coming to mind as you're sharing that, because there's a lot of power. One, in knowing that you're not alone, and two, in knowing that there's other people there that can support you as well if you do need help with things. And as you're sharing, I was
Hmm.
actually looking at my planner because I have
Yeah.
to write things down. I was telling my friend
Yes.
how people use their calendars on their phone, and it doesn't work for me. I have to like
No.
physically write it down, and it feels different. It feels more concrete. So,
Hmm. Well, that helps with memory,
mhm.
right? Writing it down helps with memory. So it's just like what we were talking about before. Don't try cookie cutter approaches just because it's what other people are doing. Like do and don't feel bad about not being on the same page. Do things that work for you and that work for your brain. Don't fix what's not broken. Right? If that's what works for you, I used to get made fun of too because I still have a physical planner and everyone's like, just put it all on your phone. And I do have it on my phone, but I'm of the mentality of like, what if it gets deleted or what if there's a glitch or something, right? So I like to have the physical as well. So don't just because they're saying don't do it digitally, don't listen to them. Do what works for your brain.
Completely agree. I feel like it's that compassion for accommodating yourself, that even though these things
Mhm.
aren't working for other people, it's just like I can take things and make them fit my own needs.
Yeah, because we're always taught to compare ourselves and to compete. So you're always looking at the person next to you, and if you're not on the same page, then, it makes you feel some type of way, and that could impact your mental health. So recognizing that we are different, we're not the same as the person next to us, and that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think is a huge step of the process as well.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think one of the other things that's coming to mind is we've been talking a bit about how mental health can influence kind of your finances. And
Mhm.
one of the things that's coming to mind is just how circular and interconnected things are, and how
Yeah.
finances could also influence your mental health. And I'm curious if this is something that you saw either in yourself or that you've seen in clients that you work with as well.
Oh, 100%. So while I was in the cycle of getting back into debt, was around the time that I, one, left home, my home state of New Jersey, to move down to Florida to be closer to my grandmother. And in that same year, the job that I transitioned to when I came to Florida, I quit it after five months
Hmm.
to do my business full time. So I had two really big life transitions in the same year, and I did it with no financial plan. Like, no, I was like, I'm gonna rip off the band-aid and I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna do this full time without a safety net. That was very, very challenging, right? I was thankfully I had support from family, so I didn't have to do it all on my own. But that kind of led to me going back into credit card debt. Now I had to go and do outreach and get my own work, not just to sustain myself on a part-time level, but on a full-time basis as well. That transition with my finances was incredibly difficult because I didn't know when money was going to come in. It wasn't a safety net every 2 weeks. I knew the exact amount that I was going to get. A lot of that instability when it came to my finances impacted my mental health. I was not sleeping. I was losing my hair from the stress.
Mm.
A lot from that first year that I did entrepreneurship, which was in 2023, I think. I don't know. After the pandemic, all the years kind of blurred together.
I was like, let's go back to the planner.
No, yes, it wasn't 2023. Yes, you see, I should write that down. It wasn't 2023 because that was the same year that I came to Florida. So in 2023, I decided to kind of risk it all. And a lot of it was for my mental health, but not realizing that because of the instability with my finances and not knowing, when I was going to get a paycheck and how I was going to pay my bills, that increased my anxiety a lot. And I really think that that's when the ADHD was really pushed to the forefront. And that's when I started to realize, okay, something more is happening, right? So yeah, that's why I said in the beginning, money impacts our mental health and mental health impacts our money. It is, it's a loop that if we don't take care of our mental health, it will have a huge impact and vice versa, for
Mhm.
sure. And thinking about the, like I said, threatened financial harm. Think about how sometimes we get anxiety just by looking at the news with the messages of the layoffs, right? That the point in time where we had, and they're still going on, but when there was a lot of layoffs happening, when there was a threat of like an economic crash or any time that happens, even if it hasn't actually happened, all of that gives us anxiety. It can
Mhm.
give us depression. It can impact our mental health even if it's just threatened or if it's perceived as something that's going to happen. It doesn't actually have to happen. Just the threat itself can make a huge impact on our mental health.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I sometimes think about for myself when I'm going through the news is there's a lot of news around inflation and things with
Hmm.
around the market and kind of trying to balance those things out of how much is staying informed and how much of it might actually be building
Harmful.
into money traumas like in the present
Oh,
day based off of the news.
yeah. It's very fear-based, or a lot of it is just fear that's instilled in us. And it's hard because we don't know, like, okay, I want to be preventative, right? But how can I be preventative if there's so much fear instilled that all I do is freeze?
Mhm.
Right? In the beginning of 2025, there was so much uncertainty in many different areas that kind of caused us all to like have to take a step back and freeze and take care of ourselves and heal.
Mhm.
And we're still doing it, but a lot of that caused a lot of financial harm for most of us
Mhm.
because there's so much uncertainty. So it's definitely about finding the right balance of yes, you do want to stay informed and you want to know what's happening from a preventative lens, but you also can't get caught up. You have to put up boundaries because we will drive ourselves crazy because the media will drive us crazy. So you do
Mhm.
have to put up boundaries on yourself for sure.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I've learned over time, and sometimes it's hard, but making a practice of coming back to this is especially when we kind of think of like the systems and what's happening in the world and things that can feel like they're out of control is I think just like falling
Mhm.
back to I will navigate this, me and
Yeah.
like, or my family, or your support system, or your community. Like, we will figure out a way forward. And I'm curious from your healing journey, if there are any things that you find like particularly helpful to come back to as well.
Well, I think language is crucial, right? And the way that we talk to ourselves and the way that we state things. So just, when losing hope and things like that, just by saying those statements, like what you just said, instead of saying, how will I? Or what are we going to do? But those powerful like affirmations, like saying, I will navigate this. I will figure it out. I will, prioritize myself. We don't realize how sometimes even something like that, so small, could be extremely, extremely important in our journey. So definitely being aware of our language. For me, it's a big, because of my anxiety, I am always focusing on the bubble of what I can't control. And I know that for me, and maybe this doesn't work for everyone, I have to bring it back to kind of what you're saying. What is in my control right now? What can I do right now in a way that feels comfortable for me? And sometimes it's about taking a step back and acknowledging that you need to heal and that you need to grieve first. um, I don't think we gave ourselves enough time to do that, especially in 2025, because we were all kind of going through the motions and trying to survive. I think there was a point in time where I had to take a step back and say, like, yes, you want to help others, but what is in your control right now? And a big part of that is taking care of myself.
Mhm.
That is what the biggest thing that was in my control in the moment, because I had a lot of like, if I'm a social worker and I'm supposed to be the one to help others, but I don't know what answers to give them, right? How can I be able to help them? So I knew I had to do a lot of the inner work, or had to get back to myself. And that's what I could control in the moment. And that's what was helpful.
Yeah.
Like I said, it may not work for everyone, but I think maybe focusing on the, okay, this is something that's out of my control right now. Let me turn my attention to what I can, and then doing things in small ways, right? Doing things that are based off of your comfort level. If it was, let's say in 2025, going out and protesting, go, do what makes you feel comfortable. But if that's not what it was, what other ways can you advocate if that's still something that you want to do in a way that feels more tangible?
Mhm.
We put so much pressure on ourselves to be a certain way, to act and think a certain way. And we push back on what our brain really wants, which is to get out of survival mode. So sometimes it is just about getting that support that you need and really focusing in this moment. What do I have control over? What is that one small step that I can take? And that was really crucial in my healing journey.
Thank you for sharing
Mm.
that tip because people are obviously going to experience anxiety at different levels. But I think during this time, there's probably a lot more people experiencing anxiety. So I think that's a great
Mm-hmm.
reminder to just come back to the moment and to what you were saying, like what do I have control over right now? What can I do in the moment right
Mm-hmm.
now? And allowing things to unfold. But thank you
Mm-hmm.
for joining me, Sarah. This has been a very lovely conversation, and I appreciate you sharing your story so vulnerably and also sharing your expertise. And before we fully wrap up, is there anything that I didn't ask you around mental health and money
Mm-hmm.
trauma that you want to share with folks?
No, but I do want to share a little bit about kind of the work that I do and how I guess the difference between therapy and then what I'm doing is financial wellness coaching. So, like I said, for those that have identified money trauma or want to see a therapist for different reasons, please go ahead and do that. Get connected to the supports that you need. You can reach out to me. Although I'm not a practicing therapist right now, I have a huge network of therapists that for free, I'm always more than happy to help people get connected. I know it's hard to go out there and find a therapist. There's so much that goes into it. So if anybody needs help getting connected with one, please feel free to let me know. What I started doing was a little bit less on the therapy side, because I wanted it to be more open for those, because sometimes therapy can still seem a little scary.
Mhm.
So really what I do is, through financial wellness coaching, I provide a supportive and like judgment-free partnership. So we really go into understanding your relationship with money, how to build healthier financial habits and create a plan for your goals. So we do talk about the money side, right? We talk about debt, paying off debt if that's what your goal is. We talk about saving, we talk about that. And then we obviously talk about the connection with mental health. We don't dive deep into the therapeutic side, right?
Mhm.
And if, I work best with those folks that are already connected with a therapist, that we can work hand in hand together. But if there's always something that comes up that I feel like warrants a little bit more support on the mental health side, I will always recommend to get connected to a therapist. But what I really want to do is support those that have identified Yes, this has been a huge part of my journey. I can see the connection. Like, how do I now move forward in taking care of myself and taking care of my money? So, through that, we'll create a plan based off of, what your mindset looks like and how can we change it and how can we build a more aligned or positive mindset around money while taking care of your mental health. So, I just wanted to confirm or talk about the differences, right, between therapy and financial wellness coaching. I think both are super important and should go hand in hand.
Okay. So if
Mhm.
I understand correctly, Sarah, when people work with you, they can really work on building that awareness and almost like a
Mhm.
strategic plan for how to
Exactly.
actually implement change.
Yes, exactly. So if you want to do the work on a more therapeutic level of processing, let's say processing my story of, my mom losing her job when I was going to college and that instability. I wouldn't necessarily go into that because that is more of a therapist role of processing what that looks like. But if you are the type that has done the work already, that has worked with a therapist or is currently working with a therapist and has been able to process that and is ready to move forward with creating a plan, but through a more wellness lens, more of a mental health lens, as opposed to maybe another money coach that doesn't focus on that as much. That is the type of work that I do. So we do still, it goes beyond like budgeting and numbers. Like we do still explore how your emotions are tied to money. We still explore beliefs and lived experiences that shape how we view money, but we won't dive too deep into processing, the more of like the trauma side of things. So I just wanted to make that clear for anyone that is interested. But yeah, I think both are very much needed
Mhm.
right now and can work very nicely hand in hand.
Yes, definitely. It's like that
Mm,
holistic approach to your
exactly.
finances.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how can folks
Mhm.
connect with you?
So you can find me. I try to make it as easy as possible. Anything that's the First Gen Madrina. My website is thefirstgenmadrina.com. On Instagram, I'm under the First Gen Madrina. My podcast is the First Gen Madrina. I wanted to make it as easy as possible. So if you type that into Google, you could probably find all of my stuff on there. But I'm always more than happy to connect with folks. You can send me a message on Instagram, on LinkedIn, to my email. If you are curious on working a little bit more or seeing how I can support you, I will always do a free cafecito chat, as I call it, to get to know a little bit more about your story and see if I'm the best fit. I will always be upfront, and if you are looking for something that is more on the therapeutic side, I will tell you, I'll give you recommendations. If you're coming to me asking about investing, I am not your girl. I don't know anything. I'm working on it. I'm teaching myself a lot, right? I'm very like foundational, right? Like we are talking, we're baby steps, right? We are working on the foundation of our finances. And then when you're ready to go, I will connect you with some amazing people that I know in my community that are doing the work in investments because I want that for everybody. That's just not my realm of expertise right now. So I will always be open, and that's why I like to do the cafecito chat before we meet, just to make sure that I'm the best fit for them.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Sarah. And I will include all those links in the show notes as well. So it will be even easier to find Sarah as well. If you haven't already, please leave a review. Let us know what you thought of this episode. And bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Rooted in Intention. Until next time, and remember to keep showing up for the life, relationships, and community